guys, Tambo here with your weekly core report. With the first week of NBA in the books, our Run Pure Sports hot streak continues. RPS has been on a roll, and NBA kicked off with some big winners. BigT hit 58,000 across both sites on opening night. New member Jeff Nugent hit for 10K. Shawnee hit for 22K. And on night 2, Eden Cohen shipped for a monster $250,000, taking down the main $888 tournament on DraftKings. On Wednesday, Locks hit for $72,000 on DraftKings, and on that same night, I hit my biggest NBA win yet, shipping for over $100,000 on FanDuel by simply using the premium content produced by our Run Pure Sports team. Glock's heat map provided me with the info I needed to build my lineup and help me ship. And it wasn't just NBA producing big winners. BigT pushed Guz the Bus Edwards hard on the Sunday Morning Wood Show.
I know we're saving money at running back this week, but are you spinning up for Derrick Henry?
Yeah, I mean, I can't play Derrick Henry when I'm playing Gus the Bus. I mean, that's tough.
How did every game finds its way back to Gus?
Gus went off, scoring 2 touchdowns at only 2% ownership. Make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel to get great calls like this for free on a daily basis. Gus was also featured in Big T's player pool, along with Bengals stacks. The Week 7 Burrow to Chase connection was on fire, leading to some big wins for RPS members. Congrats to P451017 for riding that stack to $15,000. And shout out to DK for 5 for staking Corey Pooler, who hit for $1,500. DK for himself hit for $4K on the afternoon slate. To top off the week, our members ran pure in some Showdown contests too. Last Thursday, I shipped another King of the Beach scene with plays I highlighted in my attack plan, available to premium members, featuring Jawan Johnson in the captain slot. And the winning continued on Sunday's Showdown slate with a slew of RPS logos sharing in a first place finish. Congrats to Bring the Noise, who entered 2 different lineups, which actually both tied for first. He was joined at the top by fellow RPS members Sully's World, Nuance 7, Molliver, Jay Gingery, FF Guru TX, Dub KJ, and T Brad 30 joined in, turning $68 into $1,600. Shout out as well to member Alec for turning $20 into $10K in MLB. Congrats again to all our members. If you want to be featured in the core report, drop your winning lineup in our Members Never Win channel in our premium Discord. If you're not a member, join now. You won't find a better value with all sports included for one low price. Remember, if you're not winning with us, you're watching us win. Until next time, let's keep running pure.
What is going on, everyone? AP over here at Run Pure Sports, bringing to you the lineup building show with our partner Sabersim. I'm here with my guy Jordan. We're focusing on NBA today. The Showdown slate tonight is going to be really interesting. A lot, if we have time, we'll get to it, but we do got to give the NBA some love. I've had a ton of questions, and so has Jordan. So we just thought 4-game slate on a Thursday, and it looks to be a really good slate too. So we're transitioning to that. First, let me bring Jordan in. Jordan, what is going on, my man? How has the NBA been treating you so far?
Yeah, it's been pretty good. Had my best night of the season so far on the last 4-game slate earlier this week. So looking forward to getting another one of these here tonight. Pretty decent little slate. I know sometimes on the nights where we have football, the NBA, not as exciting. Sometimes you get those 2 or 3 games, but this looks like a legit 4-game slate. I'm pretty excited to get in there and break it down and talk about it.
Yeah, very good. I am too. And if you're just because we're going to go through Sabersim, how to use it, everyone always thinks that you have to be a multi-entry player or 150 max player to use it. Incorrect. Definitely incorrect. We're going to show you how to use this if you're a single entry player, a 3 max player. We're also going to show you how to use a few content pieces at Run Pure Sports and how to integrate it into Saber or use it to enhance your process. I'll use my own heat map just because I put a rough version up today. So in addition to going through Saber like we do each and every week, you're going to get a back end view of the website and some of the tools that we have over here at Run Pure Sports. If you haven't yet, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We're bringing this to you for free each and every week. So, it's the least that we could ask. Hit the like button, subscribe. It helps us out a ton. So Jordan, let's just dive in. I believe everyone can see my screen. If we need to get in there further to make it clear, just let us know. We can mess with that, but should be looking pretty nice here. This is the main screen that we have. I think what I want to do, and this is actually what I do too, and I've picked this up from the shows that we do, Jordan, is kind of running a base build. So I haven't changed the projections at all. You can see here 4-game slate starting at 6:30 my time, but 7:30 Eastern. You'll see here we have different projection options. We can use Sabersim, we can use RPS, or we can use an average. I'm just going to use an average. And the one thing to note is we're updating our projections throughout the day. Sabersim is updating their projections throughout the day. If every time you pull this up, I think a good practice, and tell me if I'm wrong, Jordan, but it's to hit this little update right here button. Now you're good to go, correct?
Yeah, no, it's definitely something you want to stay on top of in NBA. I think also anytime, so if you're not on your computer, you come back, you load up Sabersim, we'll automatically do that refresh when you pull up the app. So good idea there. Also, right below that timestamp, last updated 12:05. Throughout the day, obviously not running as many sims, but as we get close to lock, that's an important thing to keep an eye on. And also we have sim alerts in our Discord server. So that's the Sabersim Discord. Anyone that has Sabersim with the RPS plan is welcome to come join us in there. We have that actually plugged into our Discord, so you can see exactly when new sims are running and when projections are updating. So very, very important to stay up to news on NBA.
Yeah, I mean, before the show started, you brought up a good point with Scotty Barnes starting, got him at low ownership and had a nice game there. So the NBA is the one sport that you have to be able to monitor things. And why I want to go through this in, specifically for single entry 3-max players is because I do think if you're running one lineup, you're running 3 lineups, a little bit easier to manage versus running 150. So, while you're getting alerts throughout the night, whatever, easier to manage, one lineup that you have to make some changes, swaps, whatever, 3, the same thing. And that's kind of where I'm at right now until I fully master kind of my 150 process. I'm not there yet. Obviously, because, I have other responsibilities up to lock 2. So it makes it a little bit more difficult for me, but the one thing I do feel very good about right now and is my 3-max. I've been running 3 to 5 each and every night. I do feel very good about my process with that. I've been pretty close. Haven't got the shipper yet, but it's still early in the season, but I feel like I'm really close. So I'm going to walk everyone through what I'm doing. So I literally, I got this screen right here. I start like this in the morning. Sometimes if you're in Discord, you'll see, I've posted what the Saber cash optimal is, or using our projections, or combining it with Sabers and ours. And all I do is run this. I run the cash settings just like this. I start a new build, and we've done this. If you're new to the show, this is like how we start a lot of the shows that we do here, doing this for Showdown formats, for NFL main slates, for NBA main slates. It's just to kind of get what I call a baseline to see what the projected optimal is getting us. Do you have any other comments to add to that, Jordan?
No. I think this is just a really good tool to get an idea of kind of what the slate is looking like. On a 4-game slate, it may be a little bit easier to just look and kind of see some of the plays, but on a 12-game slate, this can be so useful just because there's so much information about all the players, so many projections, so many guys playing, just to get an idea of okay, how do guys fit in? What do optimal lineups just look like here? I think this is a great way to start your process.
Yeah, and right off the bat, what I'm seeing, because it's okay, well, what do you like? Do you just run that and do you keep that build? No, I definitely don't do that. What I like to do now is I like to look at it and I like to make adjustments. I'm watching these games each and every night. I'm diving deep into the statistics too. I'm diving deep into rotations, and I'll get into the content pieces that we have to help make things easier for all of you. But right off the bat here, what I'm seeing, so I always sort by projected when I'm just trying to find, other way. That's kind of cool, actually, Jordan, that you can do it from the lowest projected too of the 40 builds that we ran using cache settings. But right off the bat, what I'm seeing here is a balanced build today. So that means, projection, like that means, we're not getting, Luka Doncic at 12K is, the projections are not going to be as high to get them in. So we're going to have to make some manual adjustments there because that mid range is so strong today if we want to get Luka in there. Other things I'm seeing, we're still waiting on Paul George news. This is a guy that you talked about before we started the show, 9.4K. Have to think he plays, no Kawhi Leonard. So as you'll see when I have the heat map and pull it up, I have, we got to wait for news on that situation. I also am seeing here, we're not getting Ja Morant. We are getting Desmond Bane though. And then we're also not getting De'Aaron Fox, which is kind of interesting. I guess not a ton of him. And so I always use this as like a baseline. And I just like to see, okay, balanced builds might be popular tonight. That means going contrarian potentially could be trying to pay up for like a Luka and Ja. And so I'll rerun this a couple times and just see like, what does it take to get those guys in, or what do those builds look like, right off the bat without changing anything. Jordan, do you have any comments on this? Because I'm going to do one other thing with, taking those notes and rerunning this just off the bat. But do you have any comments initially for where we're at right now?
Yeah, no. So I think that's great. I think looking at the salary allocation is a really good idea. You can kind of get an idea of what type of builds are going to be the most popular. It does look like with the way things are right now, balanced build is going to be a pretty popular approach here for those cash optimals. The other thing I like to look at is like kind of game stacks here, or what games people are going to be getting to. We can just tell, even just looking at the player exposures on the left-hand side here, this Grizzlies and Kings game is just going to be very, very popular tonight. I think highest total on the slate. Both these teams like to play fast. You're seeing that 100% of the cash optimals are getting to a game stack of this game. So makes that Paul George news a little bit more important. I think even if he ends up getting ruled out, I think he's sick. If he ends up sitting again tonight, it's going to open up some value on the Clippers and Thunder game, which is going to make you, one, be able to build a little bit of a different construction where you get some more studs in, get some cheaper value, and two, maybe get off of the Kings and Grizzlies game a little bit more here. So, but we know we now have a good foundation for what this slate could look like with those cash optimals because we ran this build. And I think that's the most important part.
Yeah, and another thing to that, and this gets into, mixing in some of the bias. We know Klay Thompson is not had a good start to the season. We saw that frustration when he got thrown out of that last game. So that's something that we can add some bias to. And we know the Warriors rotation right now is kind of tough from a minutes perspective. So those are things that we can add in. Another thing I do real quick. So we haven't, the only thing that we've done is, I believe, we're taking an average. So we haven't made any adjustments. Here's one other thing I do. And you'll see, like, if I went to yesterday's builds, I probably ran like I ran this 30 different times throughout the day, just looking at it. But one thing I'll do is I'll say, oh man, well, I really like Luka. Let's see I want to see what these Luka builds look like. And I'll just lock in Luka, and that 12K price tag is really interesting. So like what I'll do by doing this, it's going to pull in whatever the current best optimal projected plays are to make Luka lineups work. And so yesterday I did this with Giannis, and I kept doing it up to lock because we kept getting more Spurs news. And so I bump up these Spurs guys still with Giannis locked in, and it gave me a good idea of what the builds would look like. So now what we've done, we haven't made any adjustments except for locking in Luka. Now you can see, to make it work, it's going to be forcing in some of these, potentially fringe value plays. Aaron Wiggins. I think Keegan Murray is definitely a fine play, but you got Maxi Kleber there, Kevon Looney, I don't really like. So, I mean, you'll see here, fitting Luka in on this slate might actually be a contrarian path unless news hits, unless value become if we can get those cheap 3K value plays, we could definitely make Luka work. So what I do personally is I'll make note of that. I'll be like, okay, Luka probably could be the highest scorer on the slate. Great matchup against the Nets, who are on a back-to-back. He's 12K though. And that price tag alone is going to cap his ownership, especially when we have SGA at 9.3, Ja Morant at 10.2. He's been incredible. De'Aaron Fox at 8.7. He's been incredible. And then Paul George, who could end up being one of the best plays on the slate, at 9.4. Those guys are all at the point guard, shooting guard position, meaning that guard spot is going to be overloaded with very, very good plays. So, I mean, Luka, it seems like his ownership is going to be capped. So these are the few things I do just to set a baseline. Anything else that you want to add there, Jordan, just with like locking in players or, to get an idea of what build texture looks like?
Yeah, no, I think it makes a lot of sense, especially, when you're talking about playing single entry, 3-max, the smaller field stuff, and you can kind of start looking at some of these angles, just seeing what do lineups look like when I'm getting this guy. And I mean, you mentioned Luka's going to be low owned. We have, 6.4% right now on a 4-game slate on the most expensive player, highest projected guy on the slate is pretty crazy. So I think you nailed it there. I think this makes a lot of sense.
So yeah, let's go to, okay, so now what do? We know we have the best tool to use to help us build a lineup.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how do we use content, I think, to enhance that? I'm going to just, this is my heat map. Again, this is an early look. It's only 12:15 my time. We have a long time until the slate news hits. But right now, where I'm at with this slate, I really like Ja Morant. He's been incredible. The pace in that game is going to be phenomenal. I really like De'Aaron Fox, 8.7K. I feel very confident about those plays. I have them as core potential plays to build around. Another thing that I like to do in high pace, high upside games is play point guards against each other. They both carry high usage rates. The ball's going to be in their hands, and both have shown playmaking abilities. Ja Morant's obviously been incredible, but De'Aaron Fox, I think, is coming off one of his better assists games that we saw. I think it was against the Warriors too. So De'Aaron Fox is looking to take his game to the next level. So here's kind of what I do, to be honest. And I'm not dead set on all of this. Things could change. So like a very first look opinion for me, if you want to take this away, obviously this news in the middle, yellow means news. We're waiting on Paul George. I think he plays, and if he plays, he's going to be a good play. I would make him a core play tag there. Norman Powell's been terrible. I'm going to be off of him. Stormin' Norman, the only thing he's been doing, I think, is storming the LA night scene. So shout out to Glock for that joke the other day. And then the other thing is the LAC rotation right now is a disaster. So I think and then also add in the Thunder rotation is a disaster. So I think how you play that game is you make Shea a very good play. You make Paul George a potential core play. And what you can see here is with this heat map, you'll see all the best plays are coming in at this guard position. So like, that's when I think numbers become really interesting. And I think what it's going to do is going to make, we're going to have to get the small forward and power forward positions correct. Small forward on DraftKings, and then, obviously the forward spot too. So I think if we can figure out what the best plays are there, we're going to have a better idea of how to set up the other parts of this build. One other thing, I think the Christian Wood, I think, is a phenomenal tournament play. So you'll see the elite GPP there, good tournament play. The Nets just have no rim protection. We saw what Bobby Portis did in like 22 minutes yesterday, 24 minutes, whatever it was he played, put up a nice like 44 piece. Christian Wood has all the upside in the world. And the other thing too is keep an eye on Bam tonight. I saw he was on the initial cash optimal that we ran. Bigs with Bam. Well, Bam's been pretty terrible to start the season. Bigs with his skill set have been destroying the Warriors. We saw Sabonis put up a big number. We saw Ayton in their last number, highly efficient game. So I think Bam is another very interesting play there. Anything that you want to add? Because I'm going to go through here and start bumping these guys up.
Yeah, no, I think we should jump over and bump some of these guys up. I think that's a good idea. I was just going to add, while you're doing this here, so we get questions from people a lot of times that are like, hey, if I'm making adjustments to projections, what is that actually doing? Am I ruining the sims or anything like that? And the answer is definitely you're not ruining anything. What we do basically is we'll shift the player's distribution from our sims to match what your new projection is. So if you're bumping up, you mentioned Bam. If you give Bam a little bit of a bump, we're going to take the distribution of outcomes he already has in our sims and bump them all a little bit up based on how big your adjustment is. I actually think making these player projection updates based on what you're seeing in the heat map and some of the other Run Pure content here is one of the best ways to use Sabersim. And actually, I would say it's probably even better than using the min and max exposures before the build, because it's going to allow for a lot of flexibility. Basically, you're going to Sabersim and you're saying, hey, like, I think these players' distributions look a little bit more like this. Now, what are the best possible lineups to build? When you set min and max exposures before the build, you're brute forcing it a little bit. You're forcing the builder to make lineups in a certain way. This is more like, I think this is what the true range of outcomes of these guys look like. Now, what are the best lineups? And I really, really like this strategy. I would definitely recommend doing basically exactly what AP's showing here.
Yeah, so let me walk through just some really simple adjustments. Luka, phenomenal spot here, but he's 12K. I still don't think, even though we bumped him up to 63, I still don't think he's going to hit a lot of my builds. I really think that you need a very high projection for him to hit any type of optimal that you run. We'll get into that. Christian Wood at 42, I think it's a reason. Like, I think it's a higher range. So, okay, 85th. Let's go with this 85th percentile. Here's another thing too. If you can see this on the screen, sometimes I'll do this. I like to see this. Okay, what's the players? 56.8 would be his 99th percentile. That, like, ceiling best performance type of outcome. 85th percentile in this matchup. I don't know. I think that's reasonable. I think somewhere between 75th and 85th for Christian Wood, if we get the right rotation. We saw 29 minutes last game. I think it's reasonable here. Maybe we see 30, and I think that's all he needs to put up a decent number. So we bumped him up here. Okay, Ben Simmons, projections continue to like him at 6'4". I know, like, we saw him in a couple builds. I remember going through there in the cash build. Ben Simmons is just afraid of for him to get there, it has to be all peripheral stats right now. So I'm going to just bump him down a little bit. I'm going to leave the rest of the Nets alone. If anything, we talked about small forward being important. Royce O'Neal has been kind of a stud. I'll give him a couple points bump. Going through here, the Clippers. Honestly, what I would do is, if Paul George is in, let's assume he's in. I think let's go over here. 85th percent. Let's go somewhere, honestly, between this 75th and let's just go 75th, 53 points. I think that's pretty reasonable there. I wanted John Wall to work last game, but we saw Reggie Jackson be the guy to get back to, I think, over 30 minutes. So if anything, we bump Wall down a little bit, maybe give him a couple points. But we already know point guard is loaded. Those guys aren't really going to matter much. What's going to matter is the small forward position. And I'm going to get through how we look at those different options, because I do think that's going to be a very important discussion point on this slate. Lou Dort, another small forward, a guy who can't shoot the basketball. And then the other thing about OKC is this rotation is a disaster. Outside of Shea, Trey Mann looked awesome, but again, he's point guard shooting guard. That position is absolutely loaded. I feel much more comfortable about some of the other options that we have. So I'm going to leave Trey Mann alone. Let's go to Memphis real quick. Desmond Bane, phenomenal. Man, this backcourt for Memphis, the game environment's going to be incredible. The reason I like Ja tonight is, if you look at games where Ja is going against teams that have no rim protection, he can get whatever he wants. And that's what I see tonight against the Kings. You have Sabonis in there, but outside of, I don't think Sabonis is going to be the guy to stuff him at the rim. If anything, he could get into some foul trouble. So let's go over here. Let's look at his, 80. Let's give him between 75th and 85th percentile. So we were actually a little low there. Let's go 55. I think that's fine. I mean, Jordan, it's funny for me because everyone's like, what do you, I get the question asked a lot on Discord, what do you bump a player to? Mm-hmm. I don't really have a good answer for that. I have the time, since I'm going through this, because I use it to help dial in my content, to make those adjustments. I'll rerun this and I'll do the same process 2, 3, 4 times until I feel very good about what I'm seeing. So honestly, I don't really have a do you have a good answer for that, or
Yeah.
like, what are your thoughts?
That's a tough one. I first of all, I think looking at the percentiles and making an adjustment to there to like the player's 75th or even potentially 85th percentile is actually a pretty creative idea. I've never even thought of that. And I think that's a pretty cool tool there. Honestly, what I've recommended people do, especially if they're not sure what to do when they're first starting out with this, is just do like 10% or so of the original projection. In this case, the outcome for Morant would have been exactly the same, right? 10% of the run pure projection here would be like 5 points. So you're giving him a 5-point bump. I always think that works pretty good. The main thing, you're taking a little bit of a stand. You're getting off of what the field's going to do with some of these guys in this case. So I don't think it's like a huge deal to make sure that this number is exactly perfect. You also will get the chance to fine tune this and dial in the post build process anyway. So I think start with a little bump, see what works and go from there.
Yeah, Kevin Huerter too. I always like him in environments where there's going to be a lot of scoring. So I'm fine giving him a bump. Let's go between the 50th and 75th percentile, maybe 28. We know, so I mean, the likelihood of him hitting that small forward spot is probably going to be pretty likely, but there's a way for us to go in there and look at that. And then bam, we made the adjustment obviously there. And Miami is on a back-to-back, but the one thing I keep seeing about, with Miami, this team is they just seem to like they figure it out and they play better in the spots where they're playing against good teams. Mm-hmm. So they're playing obviously defending world champs and the Warriors. Man, that alone makes me just want to bump up Jimmy to let's just give him like that set. Let's go 70 right above the 7 just to see. Because I believe he's small forward. And then, if you want to see, so Jimmy Butler, I believe he's small forward, power forward eligible. So maybe that could be the key to this slate. Who knows? And then bam, we do like bigs right now against the Warriors, just with their rotation. They haven't been as good defensively, actually, which is interesting because this was a team that was like second or third defensively in the league. They'll get it together. It's just teams that, man, like, that when you play all the way to the championship game and like that shit, your off season is so much shorter than every other team, you're going to see lagginess on the defensive side for them to pick it up. And then the Warriors 4-game slate, man, the only guy I have interest in is, maybe Wiggins is like the tough part for me, but he is small forward. And I think that's just an important piece tonight. So I am going to give him a bump, even though I would rather fade the Warriors side. And it's a tough matchup. I just think he's going to be low owned. So I do think we give him a little bit of love there. And then Jordan Poole is an absolute stud. But again, the guard position, point guard, shooting guard is absolutely loaded. So here's what we can do. I usually will so what's your thoughts on when I get to this point, when I've made some of these adjustments, I rerun it using the cache settings. Would you recommend using different settings, like going to 3 max? Because we know we're going to go the 3 max route and then, align it with, our entry size, or would you rerun the cache setting again?
At this point, I would probably start using the GPP settings. I would start using the GPP settings as soon as you're at the point where you're actually building lineups that you think you could use. And the reason why, so you just pulled this up, this is perfect here, right? It's because we're going to start incorporating some of the things that are very important to win GPPs and doing so at the right level for the contest you're playing. So you see for a 3 max 500 person kind of contest here, we want to start including a little bit of diversity to those sims, right? We want to start thinking about ownership a little bit here. We're not just trying to build cash optimals at that point. So I think once you're at the point where you're saying, I could use these lineups if I like the way they're looking on the other side, that's when I think it's time to use the GPP settings.
Yeah, and that's what I'm going to do right now. And we'll see what it starts to give us. So looking through here, I want to pull up, let's just see. So point guards, again, Fox, Dinwiddie's still hitting a few builds. Tyus Jones, kind of interesting. Here's what I like to do, because I'll be like, oh, Tyus Jones, we didn't mess with him at all. And not really a guy we looked at much, but it's in that game that we liked. I'll take a look at some of these builds. Okay, he's we're trying to fit in Paul George here. We're trying to fit in Christian Wood. and then Andrew Wiggins. One thing too is we know one thing just by looking at this and why I don't personally like this build. One, I don't like Looney. He's probably a guy I should have bumped down. But two, we know the guard position is loaded tonight. Just going back to the heat map, we know we want to prioritize this position. Andrew Wiggins is a guy that we can put at the small forward position. So that's something that I would go and look at. But honestly, this is just that one build. So here's one thing I'll do. So we got the Saber score. We got Christian Wood that we liked in tournaments, Bam tournament play. Here's one thing I also like to do. Let me just look through just to see some of these builds. I think this first one will be good to use. I love this feature that you guys added, and I think it's really sharp. So what we're doing here is this is our the Saber, the build from our adjustments that we made that Saber likes is the highest scoring one. So now what we can do is, okay, so Aaron Wiggins, we didn't really like him, or I guess I don't. We need a little bit more news. I guess if he starts again, he could be a good play. I know he went off last game. I don't trust the Thunder. I don't trust what they're doing. If he beats me, he beats me. So we'll remove him right there. We got Fox. Obviously, since Ja, probably, what this is telling me right now, it's going to be pretty difficult to get Ja and Fox in a lineup that we really like. Especially if we're trying to fit in Bam there. And the other thing that real quick is we're getting, again, a small forward in this utility spot. So I want to make some adjustments there. Here's what I think we could do. Even though Keegan is a good play today, obviously going to be very popular, maybe one of the highest owned plays on the slate. Let's just take him out too. We might end up making some adjustments here as well. But what I like about this is now I can start playing around with this build, and I can start, molding it to make it my own as well. Like if you're building 1 to 3 lineups, it's something that you can do, or you can just play around and see it. Be like, okay, so Bane and Fox are in there. Let's just see what other, let me just pull up my heat map again real quick. So we kind of like Trey Mann. We like Jordan Poole and Bane. Were kind of the small or the shooting guard options that we're looking at. Dinwiddie was one of the other ones. And then a deep flyer was Malik Monk. Malik Monk in tournaments. His rotation was phenomenal last game. And I do got to dive in a little bit deeper to see if that was due to injury. We know this is a guy that can put up buckets in a hurry. It seems like the game environment's going to be really good for him. So what I might do is just manually put in, edit this out or find him on here, put in Malik Monk. And so now I can start to build out, a game stack that I really like. And I'm not saying this is like the build that I'm going to end up landing on. I'm just saying you can get really creative with what you do, where you can incorporate Sabersim building, optimized lineups, and then add in kind of some, a hand built, feature to it. So I think if you're building 1 to 3 lineups, it makes the process fun too. Maybe with this lineup, maybe we have to get off Christian Wood here. Maybe we have to get off Bam. If we do that, and if we start putting some of these guys like Santa Claus, we like to call him, over here at the powered forward spot, maybe that would allow us to get a run back in John Morant that we were talking about. So like, I'll literally go in here and just play around with it. I mean, this might be a little bit tough, but it is a way to stack up or full stack up this game that should have a really nice environment. So I just wanted to show this feature.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's more just for me kind of fun, because I can pull this up. I can see the plays that like I could literally put in like Big T's core. I could put in Tambo's core, anyone's core in there. And now I can easily see the other options that we can have. And I can really figure out kind of what's going on in their head and model my lineup after that, or the theory that they're using. So long story short, because we got to move on, but I love this feature because as a guy that used to hand build a lot of lineups, it allows me to add in Saber, the optimizer, and then also like the, hand building aspect to it. Do you have any comments on that?
No, I think this is one of the cooler features in the app. I think, there's a lot of people out there that don't even know this is here. Partially my fault. I'm such an MME guy that sometimes I forget how useful this edit lineups feature is, especially if you're playing just a few lineups. And I think sometimes people respond and say, well, why do I need to edit the lineups in Sabersim at all? The most important part there is you're building like a set of 500 lineups from the Sims. You can use any of those lineups as your starting point, right? When you're hand building the lineup from scratch, I think it's a lot harder to figure out how those blocks are going to start to fit together. In this case, you could do exactly what AP just did here. Start with a lineup that you like the foundation of. Maybe there's a couple guys in there that you want to swap out. Open up the edit lineup feature, start playing around with it, and then save that lineup when you're done. Really easy to kind of just get to a core of 3 or 5 lineups that you like rather than hand building everything from scratch. So awesome feature there. Very, very useful for people playing just a couple lineups.
I want to do one last thing real quick using the same settings that we're using. I do like locking in these kind of playmakers against each other. So what I did was SGA and Paul George. So like when I'm looking at this, and actually, while that's loading, when you get these games, competitive games where the ball is going to be in Paul George's hand, on OKC side, it's got to be Shea. And if you get the right game environment where these guys are going back and forth, you could make the same case for John Morant and De'Aaron Fox too. Man, it's just, gosh, their upside, they almost correlate so well together, like those two players, even though they're on opposite teams. Speaking of that, actually, is that factored into the correlation aspect?
Yeah, it is. So I wanted to talk about that. There was somebody that asked about correlation here before. So let's click on like Paul George's name and just go ahead and pull this up here. So if you do this for any player.
Too.
Yeah, so you can pull this in and you can look, and so this is his distributions in our Sims for his outcomes and also his correlations to other players in the game. So correlations in NBA are a lot lower than baseball or football or anything like that, but they're here and they're present. And you'll see, most of the time, if you go back to the top here, look at the top end of the correlations, you can see Paul George all the way. Yeah. Oh, sorry, it was lagging a little bit on my screen. He's a little bit positively correlated to some of these OKC players, right?
I must have went right by him.
Yeah, so they're right at the top, and then a little bit negatively correlated to some of the players on his own.
I'm a donkey. I was looking for Paul George, even though we have Paul George. So Shea, look at that right there. Okay, So the third highest positive correlation. That's what you're talking about, right?
That's exactly what I'm talking about, and it's a low correlation, right? Like I'm not going to come on here and say a 0.03 correlation to these guys is like a very high correlation, but it's there. And also the most important part is when we actually go in and factor this into a given lineup when we're building, we're looking at the correlation for these players when one of them has an upside game. So we're saying like, if Paul George goes nuts and scores 60 points on DraftKings, then how correlated is he to Shea? And he's probably going to be more correlated in that case because the Thunder is going to be trying to keep up, right? It's a game where both of these guys are going off. So
I think this makes a ton of sense right here because Conrich Williams too, a guy that in a tight game, he's a kind of a role player right now. And like their rotations are very difficult to figure out, but he is one of their better guys. So I think in a tight game, this makes sense. Same with Trey Mann. So I really like that. So what I was seeing
I want to add one more thing on. So if you don't mind, open up the build settings for me one more time here. Like the new build button.
Right here?
Yes, this. So on a 4-game slate, for a 3 max contest, that correlation slider is actually going to be set to neutral. It's going to be off. And that's what we found in our back testing, that the correlations don't really matter as much in terms of just looking at the Sims themselves. On a bigger slate, this slider is going to come up a little bit more. If you're looking at your lineups and you think, hey, I kind of want to get to some game stacks, I want to factor in correlation a little bit more, that would be a good opportunity to turn that slider up and start factoring that a little bit more into your build. So I just wanted to mention that on this
just
size
as a
slate.
test, should we, since this is just, on stream for fun, should we just turn it to 10 and see what happens?
We can definitely try. Yeah. And I think this is a great way to learn what the sliders do is doing some.
I do this all the time. That's why this is what part of the DFS, if you're not adding some fun into it, I think you're doing it wrong. And I think it's just, you're using all of these tools to try and build, I also have these guys. Yeah. So here, let me do one thing real quick just to make this, even though I did. So I do think, I don't think you have to do that, but I think when you're building 1 to 3 and you want a few different scripts that you have in mind, it's not a bad idea to look at that. But when I go to finalize my last few builds, I do uncheck those lock buttons, and I do have kind of a final setting that I go to and run it so that I'm not getting too much of my own personal bias, factored into it. But let's rerun that. Now, what about the would it matter if we do that, or would that be too crazy?
I mean, nothing's too crazy, right? I think the best way to learn what the sliders do is to just play with them and move them around. I mean, 10 is going to have,
just do this.
You're going to be very, very diversified. You're going to have very thin ranges of outcomes there. Probably not what you need for the 3 max, but if you looked at what the default settings were for the big 150 max contest on a 4-game slate, they're probably going to be something like sim diversity 8 or 9 on there. So
another way to use this too, we were talking about Luka 12K. Another way to think about that situation is it's Luka Doncic. He could get ownership, and a lot of ownership either way, especially since it's a 4-game slate. So while our runs and our builds are not getting any of Luka, what I do sometimes is I'm like, okay, well, maybe our thought is wrong. Maybe the industry is going to be on him anyways. Maybe he's a bad play. What number does he have to get to absolutely sink my lineups? Another way to think about it that I think is really sharp, if Luka's going to be 40, 50% owned, and none of our builds, even after being adjusted using the different percentiles, are getting any Luka in there, and maybe because it's a lack of value, really he becomes an interesting fade. So there's so many different ways to use the optimizer. So, okay, yeah, if you're, so I get why the correlation factor is probably set to neutral. I think naturally on 4-game slates, a lot of people just love to stack, especially we're in football season. We just came off MLB, where stacking is so popular. People naturally want to just fully apply it to NBA, and it's just not the case. So you can see the change in there. These sliders do have a significant impact on these builds. Do you want to talk about that for just a little bit? Because look at this. This is we were getting none of those in the cash optimal builds that we were running.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, it's going to pump up some of these game stacks a little bit more just because that's positive correlation from players on the opposing side here. It looks like really to me that it just made the builder like this Kings Grizzlies game even more, which makes sense again, because these are upside correlations, right? This is the highest total game on the slate. If there's going to be a game where a game stack is going to be very optimal in this kind of way, when you start pumping up that correlation slider, it's probably going to be that one. And that's what the builder's seeing here too. So yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. One other thing I just wanted to mention, what we could also do, let's say going back to the Paul George and Shea example here, we could set a rule as well. And we say,
let's do that.
If Shea is in the lineup, then run it back with Paul George. And it's pretty easy to do that here as well. So,
so we just do like this, and you would want to, how do we do it? So it'd be if,
so where
Shea,
it says use. Yeah. So you want to change use to if,
there we go.
Yep. And we can
say 1, and then we go over here and we just pull up PG.
There you go.
Yeah, nice, easy. Now talk about the like automatic. Is this wouldn't be like a rule that we set to be automatic, right?
No, this isn't
completely
automatic.
Other stuff.
So this is just if we just only wanted to target these two players together, right? We're saying if Shea, then Paul George. If you wanted to generalize this rule and use this kind of like for all the teams, that's when you can do an automatic rule. So we can walk through that here real quick too, just so people. So
hey, this is crazy. So you can see all the different rules from the different slates I've used. Does this just save all the time? And will that make me more laggy, or does it not matter at all if they're unchecked?
If they're unchecked, first things first, if they're unchecked, they will not affect your build. So that's a very important point. I don't think they should affect performance either way. Like you should be fine with your performance. I know people have been asking for like a clear all button. I think that's something that we definitely want to add there. Just so if you wanted to just nuke it and just remove all your old rules, you could do that. But there is a little delete button that shows up on the right-hand side as well if you wanted to do a little cleanup there at some point, but shouldn't affect performance.
Was there another rule you wanted me to add real quick?
Yeah, I just wanted to show it. So let's say, in this case, we're saying if Shea, then Paul George. But what if we wanted to say anytime we're using a player over a certain projection, use somebody on the run back? So in that case,
I like it. Walk me through this.
Let's make another group. So rule type
group.
And then what we're going to do this time, it's going to be an automatic group here. And then it's going to be an if again. So we'll say if.
Okay.
And we'll say at least one primary player is used. So that looks good. Group by player. And yeah, stat requirement. You nailed it. So let's say my projection should be all the way at the very top.
Yep. There we go.
And then whatever you think makes sense. Greater than 40 points, I like to use a lot of times. Something like that. Greater than 45 you could do instead if you want.
However let's do
you want
40.
This to be. Okay,
I think that's fine.
So if we have a player in the lineup that's projected greater than 40, then use at least one secondary player, not on the same team, but on the opposing team. Yep. And then you can set another stat requirement here if you want. Greater than 40.
Maybe we go
30.
Maybe what we do is 20. So it can be like a value piece or what have you, right? Or are you trying to capture stud versus stud like we talked about?
And that's when it really depends on what you're trying to target. If we were doing stud versus stud, like with the Shea and Paul George thing, I think maybe a little bit of a bigger number, but this is when it's kind of up to you here. And then so what these two different kinds of rules are: auto rule, manual rule, right? So here, actually, I want to show this real quick. So go back, let's edit that rule one more time. And then all the way at the bottom, click save rule.
Okay.
So what is this? People ask this all the time. What is save as auto rule? What is save versus its manual rule? So save as manual rule will basically go through and look at all of the players that this rule corresponds to and save it as all those individual manual rules right now. So you could actually click here, click cancel. Sorry, I'm having you go all over.
Oh yeah, you're good.
And just expand that rule down all the way at the bottom. So there should be like a little, there should be like a little button there. I don't see it. Well, that's okay.
Not this one,
I don't know where
right?
that is. No, there should be like a way. Maybe just click on the rule itself. Don't click on any of the buttons, but just like click it. Does it expand open?
Nope.
Oh,
right
there it
here?
is. That little
there
thing. Yeah.
So
there you go.
All right. I got you.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is, I like that.
So now it's basically, so these are all the players that it corresponds to. So every single one of these players has that rule now, and you could go in and kind of review this. And I like to save as a manual rule because I like to do this. I like to go in after and make sure that all the rules got saved correctly. If you save as an auto rule, it basically calculates when you actually build your lineups here. So, and then real quick, since we're looking at it, and one more thing, this green star, people ask, hey, what does the green star mean? The green star means this will be enabled automatically the next time you play NBA. So if you want to save a rule and always use it, you can green star it, save it. It'll automatically be enabled the next time. So there you go. So
learn something new every day. So let's go back to our settings here. Yeah, let's just say it's 3 max. So let's just do this and let's just see what these builds now look like. Even though I mean, would that be would a setting like that, would you use that more in tournaments, or I mean
for those rules?
On larger slates?
I think it's more of a tournament kind of thing because you're really trying to target like correlation and upside there. It's not something that I would say you should just do 100% of the time, but I would look at the lineups you're getting without it, and if you like the game stack path there, then it's a good time to add it in.
So then here's what I would do. I would go back through that last like what we did before. Okay, so we made a ton of different changes. We've gone through this a few different times, and let's just say we're to the point to where we're pretty satisfied with where our main builds are landing, but we still want to look through some possible adjustments, looking at different content pieces, seeing who the team is high on. Just going through kind of our back end stuff, our core plays page is one of the more popular pages. So you're going to get my core, JSU, Hoop, Glock, Title, DC, K Fallak, Gary. And you can use this. You can just go through here quick and be like, obviously no core plays are up right now because the slate is we're a long time away from the slate starting. But you could use this and you could kind of then go back to where you're at and you could just see, okay, am I aligned with them? Do I want to be aligned with them? Maybe, AP, he's colder. He's so cold right now. I don't want to follow where AP is at. You can literally, because we're very transparent. That's the one thing that we are. Like, the plays that I'm posting here are plays that I am running. Same with JSU, same with Hoop, same with Glock, same with Big T. Big T's pool too. So if you go to Big T NBA player pool, his would be a great one too, because you can see a position breakdown of where he's at. Obviously, it's not up right now, but you can see, and then you can easily go back to your build, your main build. Maybe he's not on BAM. Okay, let's remove BAM. You could do it here. You can see what the other options are. 7,300 left, and I just, okay, we really like Christian Wood there, in tournaments. You can say, okay, I'm 200 away from making him work. What do I need to do? Who do I need to switch around? The other thing too that pops out on this build, we're getting, we know the guard position's loaded today. We're getting all guards. We got Bane. We have Bane correlating nicely there with De'Aaron Fox, which is, I'm not saying it's NBA. You don't always need to correlate, but it's hard to ignore how good this game environment is going to be. Just if I go back to the heat map. Here's just on the back end, Mangone. He does a really nice 3-max piece as well that is up each and every slate. So this is actually last night's slate, not cleared out yet, but you can go. And then if you're doing FanDuel, you can go to Glock's heat map right here. You can see he just has the foundation layer built up there. But just going back to mine, kind of to put a cap on this and how I use it, I'm literally adjusting these and correlating it with how I want the bias to be factored in to my end result here. And when I look at this, the late slate again looks like it's going to be very, very elite. We have a high pace game. These players, I'm going to want exposure to them. And just looking at the guard position, I'm going to want exposure to this guard position. So kind of to finalize it, I'm pretty satisfied with what I'm ending up with here. I'm not saying this is where I'm going to end up with. I'm just saying I really like how the optimizer is bringing it together for me, makes it very easy, simplifies my process, and also makes it fun, when you're diving through this. Anything that you want to add here to kind of put a button on all of this?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say, we have the Sabersim Discord the channel in the Run Pure Discord. I'm in there every day. One of our other coaches, Andrew's in there. Ruben's in there. Matt and Andy poke there. I mean, we're all in there answering questions. If, we do this show once a week here on Thursdays, but if you check out Sabersim, start messing around, have questions for us, fire away at us. I think, most of the time we're getting to questions like in an hour or less, closer to lock, sometimes just in a couple minutes here. So please ask us questions. We love talking about this stuff. So it's a great resource.
I got one last thing that we're going to do. Back to what I was saying about Luka, because, I do think it's a good point. We're showing, all right, so Sabersim's ownership is derived by basically running simulations on the slate, correct?
That's correct. Yep.
So where the gap could be there, and this is, you have to interpret it on your own, but like the industry out there, no one's going to say Luka's a bad play. People are going to play Luka. 12K, of course he's a good play. So what I like to factor in here is by jamming him in, like what number does he have to absolutely hit to crush us? Because maybe he's actually a bad play tonight relative to all the other options that we have available, if that makes sense. So I'm not saying he's a bad play because it's Luka Doncic. He's obviously a phenomenal player, but relative to this slate, the pricing and players that we have, maybe he is a bad play. Let me just do one last thing. I'm going to reset all of these. I'm going to run. We'll see how long this takes. So here's how I would do it, and tell me if I'm wrong or not. But I would run 1,500 lineups. What I'm trying to see is, when we go to look at how many builds is he hitting in the entire pool, kind of like what we do for Showdown. That's how I look at it. And if Luka's not hitting in much of this 1,500, we might have, he might actually not be like that good of a play tonight due to the lack of value. Is that the correct way of kind of figuring out if a player who we know is going to get ownership because of the slate size, maybe it's someone that we want to be like? Am I asking it like? Are you understanding kind of what I'm asking?
I get it. And the way
should I run this real quick?
So what I would increase sim diversity all the way to 10. And what that's going to do is that's basically going to be single game simulation optimal. So this is calculating how likely is Luka to be in the optimal lineup at the end of the night. and we can give this a second to run. The one thing I just realized
look how fast that is. There we go.
Yeah, it's quick. We made a lot of build speed improvements. The one thing I realized, we left our rules on, but that's okay. This should still.
No, I took them off.
Okay,
I took them off. Yeah,
cool.
So let's just. All right. So Luka, we know he's hitting some. 13% of the pool.
Yep.
So how would you interpret that data?
Well, I mean, it depends. So I think there's a couple ways to look at it. On one hand, you can say, well, if he's only going to be 8% owned, which is what our projection says, and he's optimal 13% of the time, maybe it's actually worth taking a little bit of a shot on him and getting to 25%. If you think he's going to come in higher than 13% owned, if you think just because of his name, just because of the industry, he's going to be 25%, which I think is probably more likely, actually,
right.
When I'm thinking it through,
too.
Then I'm probably just going to fade it and just hope for the best and hope that, you get the 87% of the time where he's not in the optimal lineup.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then just looking at what the builds look like, I mean, it comes down to a couple of things. Cause like right now we're filming this early. Okay. There could be an injury that comes up that creates a situation that gives us a ton of value. Then Luka becomes the best play on the slate,
right?
Because you can fit him in. So that's why NBA, you can't set something right now and it be like, you can't just set it and forget it. Like, I think for other sports, you could, like, you could get like NFL, like you get away with stuff. Yeah, I mean, obviously you got to keep an eye on injuries and stuff, but there's no other sport like the NBA where you got to be going all the way up to lock and adjusting these things, because Luka, while right now the data shows maybe not the best play relative to this slate, given his price tag and the other options that we have at that position, but a value frees up and opens up, significant injury, etc., could become one of the best plays on the slate. So,
right,
man, I think this was a really good breakdown. Again, I didn't have YouTube chat up, but again, if anyone had any questions or anything like that, feel free to DM us, send us a message. We want to cover more stuff like this ongoing. Give us ideas. We want to, do this in a way where you can take it, build your own process to help you, become a winning player. I know we do got to get out of here, but Jordan, any final thoughts tonight on the slate? Just any updates that's coming with Saber, even though you guys have already made a ton of really good updates. Anything that you want to add?
No, I mean, honestly, yeah, we're still pushing forward, trying to make some improvements. We've been moving really quick, pumping out new features. We did do that big update to the build speed, which we just got to see here live on the show, which is great. So I would say right now we're focused on a little bit of cleanup, just making sure everything's smooth and easy to use and stable for you guys out there. And then we'll start building out some of those new features. Nothing more to add for me here. I would say definitely, obviously, talking process here, but keep an eye on the news. This could all change very much if Paul George gets ruled out or some other random guy gets ruled out here. So I don't know. I guess that's all I've got. AP, do you have a last second take on the Thursday night football game here tonight that you want to drop on everybody?
Yeah, I mean, man, could we see, so like Bray, like I'm really curious to see where everyone's going to be at, because man, I want to play, like, I don't want to get stuck playing defenses. We got Tom Brady, we got to see points tonight. So I don't know. These Thursday games have been a disaster, but that's kind of factored in to all of us, so like, I don't have a hot take yet, but I'm sure I'll get one. I know we got the Showdown show coming up with BigT, JSU, Tambo, and the crew. They will be all breaking it down. And then up to lock. I'm going to be up to lock with JSU later on today. So I'll be going through the same type of stuff here. But no, as far as the game, I don't have a take. Do you have a take? Who do you think's winning tonight?
I like the under, and I like the running game tonight. I think, both of these teams, the Bucs clearly want to protect Brady. He's not throwing the ball as much as he wants to, or as much as he used to. And Lamar's a little banged up. I think these are two teams that are good teams. They know they're good teams. They're probably already focused on the postseason and want to protect these guys. I could see the game going under, and I like Leonard Fournette. I like Gus Edwards.
Gus the Boss and Uncle Lenny. I love it, man. You sold me. I'll tell you that.
That's my take.
No, I like that a lot. That's a good take. I got to get off my the game going over on Thursdays. These games are just a disaster. Oh man, No, good stuff. With that, we got to close this down. So again, if you have other questions, hit me up in Discord, shoot me a message. We'll get back to you. We'll cover all the stuff. Hopefully you found this to be beneficial. We want to continue to do more shows like this. Let me know though, NFL or NBA next week. Whatever you guys decide, whatever you let me know, that's the route we'll go. Since we covered this pretty nicely today. But I'm AP. That's Jordan. Simon, get us out of here.